the fantasy cheat sheet presented by Going for Two Live. Sorry for the delay. We've had a little bit of technical difficulty on Evan's side over in Delaware. He's having storms that he doesn't normally get, so his connection is a little shaky. So if he has to bow out later, it is because of the storm, not because he doesn't want to be with me and Zach. So to get into introductions, first we got Zach at the Big Pulowski, and we got Evan at EV_RITT3. You think after this long, Evan, that I would have that down. So
it's all good, man.
So for today's episode, I know all three of our brains and a lot of people in the community's brains are on SFB 12, but we're going to continue with our preview. We're going to talk about the AFC and the NFC East, which is a good thing for Evan because he finally gets to say some good things about his Cowboys. But before we do that, let's get into the news real quick. We got to start off with the big one that's happened since we've talked last. I don't think I've talked to either one of you about this, so I'm curious to see what you guys think. Baker Mayfield is finally out of Cleveland. They had to take $10 million of his $18 million contract to get rid of him, but now he is a Carolina Panther, which makes me sad because, yes, and Evan knows this more than you, Zach, the first few weeks of the season last year, I was running around the table celebrating about Sam Darnold, and then boom, it shot me in the foot. But Zach, what do you think about the deal? What do you think about him in Carolina and the whole situation?
From my perspective, it's a win-win trade. You know, Cleveland needed him out of town. He wasn't a good fit in that clubhouse anymore. There wasn't any good chemistry there, just a lot of bad blood for the organization. So it's good for them to get rid of him, kind of clear it out, and just, you know, hopefully Deshaun in there for their circumstances is only out part of the year, and Jacoby is just filling in the meantime. In regards to Carolina, though, I think his ceiling isn't necessarily that high, but it raises the floor of what their QBs are and what they can be for this year. Do I necessarily have a lot of high hopes for any of the QBs in Carolina? No. But for someone that owns CMC in a few leagues and, you know, is looking at Tommy Tremble as kind of maybe a breakout year two guy, Baker will help there. So, yeah, I like the trade for both sides. What are your guys' thoughts on the move?
Evan, Mr. Delaware, what do you think?
Yeah, once again, sorry, but it's, you know, it's good. I mean, Baker obviously did not. He had to get out of there. And they say it's going to be a QB battle down in Carolina. Baker to win that job. I really do. I think Sam Darnold has had his prove himself and time again. He just proves he can't be, you know, a serviceable QB in this. Or at least has proven he can be serviceable. And I think it's good for DJ. DJ Moore finally gets at least a quarterback who is halfway competent. Like Baker's going to put him, you know, through the roof for anything, but he can play. And I think DJ Moore is talented enough that if he gets somewhat of a capable, to be happy with that. And then, in terms of fantasy, snagged Baker late in drafts, you know, and startups and so forth. You got a QB3. It's better than where he was going. You know, for where you got him at, he was basically free. So, all in all, it's not the most exciting news, but it's definitely a lot more exciting than you get to the Bears today.
Yeah, before we get into that one, all I want to say is for the people out there saying it's a competition, BS. It's Baker's job, in my opinion. Yeah. Period. That's all I need to say. There's nothing much else to say. Carolina's not going to go and take $5 million of his contract if they want him. Yes, Darnold's getting more, but that's their fault. I think Matt Rule needs this to happen. Ben McAdoo, as their OC, needs to do something because he sucked in New York. So this is Baker's job to lose, period. I don't care what people say. That's just my opinion. But the other news that come out today, N'Keal Harry out of Arizona State University, who was on the New England Patriots, is no longer. Why? Because he is a Chicago Bear. what do you think, real quick, Zach? We don't want to get too much in this because I want to hear what Evan has to say about his Cowboys, just in case he has to check out.
I mean, there's not really too much to say about N'Keal Harry. I mean, I'll leave his performance to speak, which is nothing. Yeah, but hey, at the same time, other than Geriatric Jones, who the Bears just drafted, and Darnell Mooney, Cole Kmet, they could use anyone. I mean, St. Brown wasn't really a great addition, but that was kind of another big name piece they brought in relative to their additions to that wide receiver room. So someone like N'Keal Harry, he wanted a fresh start somewhere. This is a good opportunity for that. And if there is untapped potential, this is the perfect chance to tap into that. But other than that, I don't really see what much else needs to be said on that subject.
Yeah, for sure. So let's just get into the main event of our episode. So we have our topics. Now we each have 3. We're going to try to get Evan in on his main one. So we think he might have to bow out because of the storm. So Evan, let's just start. What do you think about your Cowboys, and more specifically, a certain somebody? And let me pull this up because I have to, if I got this ready for you. Dalton Schultz, baby. Take it away.
Sir. I mean, I guess in a way, Schultz already broke out in 2021, I guess. I mean, he finished as PR at 12.3 fantasy points per game. But I'm expecting that in 2022. In 2022. With those 2021, or quite honestly in 22. So he was targeted on 20 run last season and has averaged 32.6 routes run per to only a tight end you might know, Mike, named Travis Kelce out of Kansas. With Amari Cooper being traded to Cleveland, Cedric Wilson in Miami, Michael Gallup let's start the season, Schultz will quickly become one of Dak Prescott's favorite targets, and was when all those guys were on the field last season. Also heading into 2022 with 1,898 vacated air yards, 5 targets, and a vacated 32.1% target share, 34.4% inside the 10-yard line. You can expect a huge for Schultz across the board, man. In 2 games without Cooper last season, Schultz 3 routes was targeted 7.5 times per game and averaged 74.5. Those are Darren Waller type receiving metrics. That's target competition than Darren Waller this year by far. So some people, but honestly, I won't be shocked if Schultz has 1,000-yard season, 8 or more, 10 or more touchdowns, and outperforms his tight end 5 finish from last year. Honestly, in 2023, we're talking about Dalton Schultz within the same discussion as Mark Andrews, Travis King. He's literally not going to come off the field. He's one of Dak's most pass catchers, especially in the red zone. And now than more, than ever in previous. And I still see him as, like the tight end 6, tight end 7 off the board. My favorite tight end targets in drafts. And, I'm all in on Dalton Schultz. I see him as a top 5 quarterback or better.
Yeah, Zach, what do you think about Dalton Schultz?
He's a hard guy not to love at this point. Evan alluded to a lot of it. There's no reason to see anything other than a high volume this year with Gallup returning from injury, Cooper gone now. It's Lamb, it's Schultz. Those seem like the top options. Obviously, they drafted Tolbert, but we don't know how long that'll take for him to really be brought into the offense. I like Schultz a lot. My only concern with him is maybe some of the price. And it looks like Evan's peacing out. Evan, sorry to hear that about your connection, but hopefully the weather gets better for you soon. But
thanks, guys. Sorry.
Hey, don't worry about it. You got the storm to worry about it. We'll handle it from here, buddy. I'm just glad you tried.
No, I like Schultz though. I mean, I think there's a lot of excitement there. I mean, I've seen him be fairly aggressive for certain people as that tight end 6 off the board after that main group up top. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of upside there. So if you're not paying that premium price of the top 5 or so tight ends, that's a guy that can produce a lot for you at that position relative to where you're getting him.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have much more to say. I am starting to feel. I know me and you play a lot of Dynasty and we're drafting an SFB right now, but part of me is afraid of Dalton Schultz. And the only reason I bring that, like, I'm not afraid of him personally, but the only reason I'm afraid of him, and I think you'll agree, is I think by the time redraft really gets kicking and we're getting like 2-3 weeks away from the season, and some, I like to draft a little bit later just so I don't get stuck with, a Dobbins injury or an Akers injury in preseason and stuff like that. I have a feeling with all this hype, and there's a lot of other bigger name podcasts that even some of the casuals listen to, they're on the Schultz hype train, that his price is just going to be inflated to the point where I won't, in the style that I like to play, I won't be able to take him. Because in redraft, I'll be honest, in redraft, I don't take a top tight end. I will in Dynasty to get that advantage like a Kelt, like I did in one. Everyone in my home Dynasty league that started a couple years ago, no one thought I was going to take Kelsey all offseason, even though I was a Chiefs fan, and I did because of that disadvantage. But in a redraft league, I am more keen to stream or to get a lower guy to keep that distance. That's just how I play.
I agree. I mean, it's a similar standpoint for me. I mean, I even think about the Scott Fishbowl for specific kind of strategy approaches. I mean, I've watched Schultz kind of really skyrocket up those boards in regards to after that first tier, especially in a tight end premium format. For me, I've got in this year, 2022, it's Andrews, Pitts, Kelsey in some order. Those are my big 3 that I want.
Yep.
And after that, if I don't get one of those 3 at a reasonable price relative to where I want to take them and what I'm trying to build, I usually roll it all the way back and I'm eyeing someone like Cole Kmet, who's usually available roughly around 100 for that ADP. Then I can fill out a lot of those other positions. So for me, Schultz is kind of in that higher end gap area that I'm really not looking to take a tight end there. And that's when I fall back.
This is perfect. What Jamie just put, like, that is
middle of the 8th at the tight end premium. I love that there. I mean, there's good value. Obviously, there's concern because it's a contract year. We don't know where he goes next, but there's plenty of teams that need a tight end that have a QB, and there's plenty of opportunity in other situations for him as well. So yeah, that 8th round price, I like that. But I've seen him go in the 6th round range a lot, and that's where I get a little nervous.
Yeah, and I think we all agree with that one. So, Zach, I know Evan wanted to hear what you had to say about this guy. This guy's been getting a lot of heat in social media lately for other stuff going on off the field. But I want to know what you think about Zach Wilson on the field in New York.
Well, I know of him as a few names. I mean, I put it in our show sheet. I know him as the Mormon Mahomes. I know him as the MILF Hunter. I mean, call him whatever you want, but I love him. I've been high on him since pre-draft last year. It's tough because for me, I've always got this motto where I can't truly assess a QB until year 3, but I'm expecting a lot more hope and tapping into that potential this year. I mean, they brought in Garrett Wilson. They added another weapon. They brought back Braxton Berrios. They've still got Elijah Moore. I mean, they also got I was going to say Spiller, but no, Breece Hall along with Michael Carter. They stacked up on that offensive line as well through the draft and through free agency. They got some pieces on defense. I like a lot of what the Jets are doing, which makes me just drink that Zach Wilson Kool-Aid even more. I think the talent's there. The team believes in him. You got to remember, this is a coach and a front office that drafted him, that believed in him. So it's not a new front office that didn't invest in him. It is that same front office. So they're going to do everything they can to see him succeed. And I think we're going to see some of that. In formats like Scott Fishbowl, I'm a little nervous because that efficiency isn't necessarily there. And I don't really expect it to suddenly jump from like mid 50s to around that 66.6 completion percentage. But in formats where passing efficiency isn't scored, I like him a lot. I think he's being undervalued. Dynasty, it's a little tricky, but what is nice is you'll see Trevor Lawrence go second through fourth round in Dynasty startups usually. But Zach Wilson, wherever Trevor Lawrence goes, he's usually 2 rounds later. And for me, splitting the difference there, I'm going to take that Zach Wilson startup price over the Trevor Lawrence startup price every time. But I love what they're building around Zach Wilson. I'm very optimistic for what we're going to see this year. I'm trying to get my hands on Zach Wilson in as many leagues as possible because this is the same thing I was doing with Josh Allen a couple years ago. If you see little flashes of things you like, even if you think it's going to take time, you want to get in ahead of time. Because the moment that promise really starts to overwhelm in comparison to the bad moments, the price just skyrockets, especially in super flex leagues. So those guys where you think that potential's there, be aggressive in getting in ahead of time, or else you're going to pay an astronomical price to try and get them. What are your thoughts on the MILF Hunter, as I like to call him?
You can call him that because I will not call him the Mormon Mahomes. I mean, that's not that's not happening. I do like Zach. I wasn't as high on him as some people were going into last year. But like you said, if a new coach and a new GM comes in on the first year and drafts a QB in the second pick overall with the quarterbacks that were available in that draft class, not including Mac Jones. And the reason I'm saying not including Mac Jones is no one thought Mac Jones was going to get taken in the top 15. No one thought Mac was going to do what he did last year. Bill did, but that's a different story. So you had Fields on the board, you had Trey on the board, and they still took Wilson. They go out, they got him Corey Davis. Not saying Corey Davis is great, but they got him Corey Davis. They drafted the guy who I love, Elijah Moore. Then they go out this year, and they drafted Michael Carter last year. Then this year they go out and draft another running back in Breece Hall. They go out and draft another wide receiver in the top 10 and Garrett Wilson, that was the move to me. I think Elijah Moore and Garrett Wilson are going to help him because the reason I think is Breece we'll get to Breece in a little bit, but I think Breece and Carter are going to be the sense where they want to run the ball like they do in San Fran. Not saying they're going to run it as good as San Fran or the most yards. What I mean by that is they want to use the run to set up the pass. They're not going to be a pass to set up the run team like some are. They're going to be the other way. Then Wilson can play action to the boys, to Wilson and to Moore, or use his feet. And I don't want to say that – I'm not saying he's going to be a top 10 tight end or anything like that. But CJ Uzuma was relatively okay at times for Joe Burrow, and I think he could be a safety blanket at times for Zach.
He's been hurt right now, though. The other tight end,
Tyler Kroft.
He's been impressing so far. He's building a lot of chemistry with Zach so far in camps, from what I've read.
And for Dynasty, not for redraft, and for Dynasty, don't forget that they drafted Jeremy Ruckert out of Ohio State.
Yeah, I love Jeremy as well. No, I mean, I'm keeping my eye on that. Last year I was watching Kenny Yeboah. He was a UDFA. He was one of the major signing bonus guys.
Yeah.
And I was keeping my eye on him to see if he could build some chemistry, because those tight ends, especially with the QB that's struggling and trying to get his foothold, those are the guys that can be open at the shorter routes where they can really build a lot of chemistry and consistently be looking for them when they come under fire from a collapsing O-line. And I think an important part to remember about the Jets taking Zach Wilson last year was they took him second overall. And, I mean, they had the 14th pick where they took Vera Tucker, so they boosted the O-line there. But they also had 202 where they got Elijah Moore. They could have easily taken someone else with 102 and traded up into, say, like 110 to get another QB they liked if they weren't so high on Zach Wilson. So they clearly just liked what they saw there. Conklin was good last year, as Jamie points out, with Cousins. Oh, yeah, it was Conklin. that I was reading
Conklin,
about.
yeah. Conklin.
Yeah, not Croft. Yeah, Conklin has been. Thank you for that, Jamie. Conklin's been building a lot of chemistry. There's a few tight ends to monitor there with the Jets, but yeah, I like Elijah Moore. I love Garrett Wilson for what he can be, especially in dynasty formats. But Breece Hall is kind of the answer there. You know, if you're looking at which Jet offensive weapon is going to get the most fantasy points consistently, I'm looking at Breece Hall because Mo Salah, he comes from the San Francisco coaching tree under Shanahan. They love to be versatile in the run game. They like to use that first and then build into passing plays from there. What do we got up next, Mike?
So hold on real quick because I just lost something.
No worries. No, I'll keep going about Zach Wilson then because I love the dude. I mean, look, they've got weapons. They have picks. They're being smart and strategic. They really are trying to build around him, though. If you want to, for me, there's a lot of hype, a lot of upside with guys like Trey Lance. They took him third. We haven't seen anything yet, and it's tough to really know. Same thing with Justin Fields. Remember, like what I was alluding to with the Jets front office and coaching staff, Fields is with a new head coach, a new front office that didn't draft him. So this is kind of a prove it thing for him because if he's not showing promise, they can be like, we didn't take him, and they can re-roll the dice. But they're going to ride out Zach Wilson, hoping they see that promise.
Oh yeah, they're gonna roll it out. So let's switch from, I'll give it to you this time, the Mormon Mahomes, and let's go to an East Coast. Get me some self a Philly cheesesteak sandwich while I talk about the two-headed monster in Philly. Why do I bring this up? Because they are a running team. Everyone's going to think obviously us degenerates like me and you who dive into every little analytical and not even analytical, just watching the game and every play we know. They had the most touchdowns last year on the ground as a team. It's Miles Sanders. Everyone's talking about the interview Miles Sanders had where he said, don't draft me, blah, 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 blah. Well, guess what I'm going to say? Listen to frickin' Miles Sanders, but it has nothing to do with Miles Sanders and what he said in the interview. It's because it's a 50-50 split. They're going to use Gainwell more, I believe. And here's a stat that I saw today that someone else posted. I'm going to give him credit for. It was Joe Holka. He posted a thread. He's been posting some threads. Go check it out. He's going to do like 100 threads up to the opening day of the year. This is what's crazy. Sanders was the first running back in 40 years. Okay. That's since the year I was born. Okay. That just shows you how old I am. He rushed for over 750 yards. He averaged over 5.0 yards per carry and had no freaking touchdowns. Okay. That's what's crazy to me. He was 29th in opportunity share. Gainwell was only 72nd in the league. But Sanders had 754 yards on 137 attempts. Gainwell only had 213 yards on 56 attempts. But Gainwell had 4 touchdowns on the ground. He also had 1 in the air. So he had 5 total touchdowns. In PPR scoring, Sanders was 41 in running backs. Gainwell was 51. Boston Scott was 50th. People are saying, this running core, they're going to be able to throw the ball to A.J. Brown and Devontae and all them. I know how you feel about the NFC East. I will say it for you. But for Miles Sanders, I am staying away from him at cost. If I can get Gainwell cheaper or if he drops a little, I will draft Gainwell. Please don't listen to this if you're drafting in my Scott Fishbowl. But other than that, I am off of the running core of this team this year because of that reason. Because once you get into the 1 and 2 yard line, I still believe, even though they're saying he's going to throw the ball and not run as much, I still think once you get in the the 1 and 2 yard line, you're going to have just as many touchdowns and touches from Jalen as you would the other two, and that's why I'm out. What do you think, Zach?
Like you already alluded to, the NFC least. This is a division of fantasy players I do not want to have equity in, especially at the top. Miles Sanders, I know he's falling later than most RB1s for their teams, that is. But, I can convince myself maybe Gainwell's worth it at a later round, but I'm nervous because unless Sanders is hurt, I have a hard time looking at Gainwell as a guy that I'm realistically putting into my starting lineup at any point in time unless I have a nasty bye week situation or a lot of injuries. Obviously, say you have Gainwell and you have two other running backs ahead of him on your roster and one of them gets hurt or they have a bye and Gainwell is that 50-50 split guy, he can contribute more than most backups. I understand it there. But otherwise, I get a little concerned. You don't want to depend on him too much based off the volume, the opportunity that's going to be there. I still think the running game is going to be their focal point. I understand they brought in A.J. Brown. They have Devonta Smith, Dalton Schultz, and Jalen can throw it all right. I'm not a big believer of Jalen. But if there's a guy on that team that I'm going to take for a late round flyer, it will be Mr. Gainwell. I don't want Sanders. He scares me too much. And I can't convince myself on the price of the A.J. Browns right now. I mean, if I'm looking, it's either Gainwell late or it's Devonta Smith, who I think benefits from the team's game planning in regards to what they're trying to do with covering A.J. Brown. Otherwise, though, I'm trying not to touch the Eagles because, this is just a team that I don't really trust consistent production from one guy. I see it very spread out where it's not a lot of really high end, like, you think of best ball formats where you're going for those really high upside weeks. I look at more of a consistent floor, but not a lot of big boom weeks because it's always spread out so much.
Yeah,
Do you
for
agree
sure.
with that?
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with you. Let's move on to the next one. In honor of Evan, because Evan did, I just want to point this out to the viewers. Evan put a lot of work into his notes. He put a lot into this episode. He's messaging me privately. He is really freaking bummed that he can't be here tonight. His audio, the storm just wasn't working. So instead of just rushing through a couple and us just giving ours, I am going to do my best to beat Evan real quick. So, Saquon freaking Barkley. All right. Saquon Barkley. All right. So, Mr. Saquon Barkley is his name. This guy came into the NFL and exceeded all expectations. He was a beast at Penn State, had tremendous draft capital coming into the NFL, and everyone, including me, knew this guy was going to be an absolute stud. So much so that in his rookie year, his ADP was RB6 before he ever even played a single snap as a professional football player. Just insane. And no one would deny that he's a generational talent, and he just completely and utterly superseded all of his expectations, literally finishing as the RB1 overall in his rookie season with the second most PPR points with 385.8, the most of any rookie since Eric Dickerson in 1983. He also rushed for 1,307 yards and 11 touchdowns while adding 91 receptions and 721 yards more through the air, with an additional 4 TDs, giving him 15 total touchdowns for his rookie season. I mean, I'll even say that's a crazy number. Those 91 receptions were good for the 4th highest among all rookies, not just running backs, but any rookie that season. Now I get it. You're sitting there saying, yeah, that's cool and all. That was in 2018. We're in 2022, and his last few seasons, I get it, have been riddled with injuries. But things happen, and I'm not going to give up on a generational talent like Barkley, and the Giants surely aren't either. Now, I'm not saying he's going to get back to his rookie year form, although I'm not saying he can't either. But by no means is Saquon washed up, and he still has the skill set to become a top 5, a top 3, heck, even the top dog in fantasy. Before the fluke injury last year against the Cowboys, we saw him in weeks 2 to 4 start to get some of his pop back, and he was being utilized heavily, which was a good for an average of 19.9 PPR points, and then the stupid ankle sprain happened. He tried to come back around week 11, I think it was, and just was not himself. But look, he's 2 years removed from his ACL injury and should be fully healed, if not damn close at this point. The Giants have made considerable changes to their staff this offseason, and their entire scheme should be in for some serious transformation. They now have a head coach in Brian Dable, who I think is going to be an excellent addition for the Giants because he is an offensive-minded coach who was the offensive coordinator for the Bills and had a huge part in the improvements of Josh Allen. I mean, compared to Joe Judge, who was a freaking special teams guy, Dable is going to be leaps and bounds better than him. The Giants also brought in multiple zone blocking upgrades, including rookie Evan Neal out of Alabama, who was a great name, by the way, and was arguably the best lineman in the draft, who will make an immediate impact and upgrade that O-line significantly. Lastly, reports out of camp from Barkley himself is he feels like he's really healthy and way better than he did at this point last season. So for that reason, I am completely on Saquon Barkley. Evan, I hope I did you justice with reading your notes. But come on, you really had to throw an Evan, the best name for Evan Neal, pun in there. Zach, before I say what I think about Barkley really quick, because couple episodes ago, I already said I think he could be a top 12 running back. What do you think about Saquon?
Well, I think my cat's already sharing enough opinion in the background on Saquon, and I am scared of taking him because of where he's going, but he reminds me a lot of Christian McCaffrey, where if you believe they're going to be healthy this year, you got to take them. If that's your guy and you think this is the year they shake off those injuries, this is when you pull the trigger. Because the only knock on Christian and on Saquon is their injury history. There is no part of the debate or the argument where you can say they aren't efficient in this, or they don't produce there, or they can't do this or that with their physical skills or abilities. All of it comes down to health. If you believe that this is the year that Saquon or CMC stay healthy, you got to go get them because the production will be there. So for me, I've stayed away from Saquon for the most part. I'm nervous about it. I also try not to take CMC too much because I want to build around guys I think will actually be there the whole year. But if you want to believe and play that high risk, high reward game of playing that injury risk, you can definitely reap the reward if they're on the field. What are your thoughts on Saquon, Mike?
So I'm mixed. I'm kind of in between you and Evan. I do think there's a chance he could be a top 12, like I mentioned. I don't think he's going to be a top 3, like Evan said in his notes that he could be. I do think I completely understand your sentiment in the sense of being worried about the injury and not wanting to invest what you might have to invest. But I am willing to do it on certain roster builds. It'd have to be the right situation. But if he does perform and I was to pass on him, I'm going to be mad because that's just the way I am. Do I think he's more likely to be a 12 to 18 kind of running back? Yeah. But right now, the hype's starting to build up again where you're going to have to pay more than you want if that's all he's going to be. And that's why I feel the way I do. I think that's kind of what you're saying in a different way.
Yeah. No, I mean, Saquon, CMC, they're guys where the weeks they are playing, I look at them as top 10 running backs for that week. But that's if they play the full game, because both guys, we've seen great starts to the game, oh, cool, 8, 12 points in the first drive. And then, that ankle.
Yep.
And then suddenly it's 4 weeks, 4.5 if you include that week. So I'm scared in regards to investing in him. There is definitely some upside you can benefit from if they are that guy. But, realistically, if I'm going to go for high risk, high reward, I'm going to go for someone like Michael Thomas. Obviously a different position, but ADP wise, Michael Thomas is there way later in drafts. You know,
Yep.
Saquon, CMC, there's still these big profile guys that are going top 3 rounds in most formats. And for me, I would rather play that dangerous game on a guy that's much later in rounds.
I completely get it. So let's get into your next one. And we're going to have a little back-to-back talk about the New England Patriots. So, Zach, why don't you tell us? I honestly don't know if this is good or bad. I haven't talked to Evan or Zach about this at all. What do you think about Jacoby Myers?
It's good. It's really good stuff, actually. You know, that's he's someone I took in the Scott Fish Bowl even. I mean, he's someone that I think is generally undervalued. Last year, I mean, played all 17 games, 126 targets, 83 receptions, 866 yards, 2 touchdowns. And I like the 2 touchdown aspect because obviously New England is more of a run first offense, but the guys that, you know, they're fairly respectable in producing in a fantasy regard without touchdowns. That's promising to me because guess what? I'm betting on the upside of those touchdowns going up, not on those touchdowns maintaining. I look at someone like James Conner or other guys where they had this high volume of touchdowns and you're betting on these guys to produce the same amount of touchdowns again to be relevant in regards to where they ranked last year. Jacoby Myers, though, he only had 2 touchdowns. So I see plenty of room for his touchdown volume to go up, but I love the 126 targets. I don't look at Devontae Parker as a real threat for targets. I think Myers is Mac Jones' favorite target. Mac Jones is in shape now, too. So, hey, maybe that helps him produce some more. But yeah, and Jamie alluded to here, Myers had the same target as Marquise Brown, but it drafted Myers 7 rounds later. And that's a great point. I mean, I look at Myers in Scott Fish Bowl, I took him in the 13th round. And that's a guy that's a wide receiver 1 on a team. A guy that, you know, I needed wide receivers and I waited. And those are the kind of guys you can get. I wouldn't necessarily depend on him being there in the 13th. But if you want to play the 0 wide receiver approach, like I like to do from time to time, you can reap rewards with these late round guys where, hey, it might not be a super aggressive pass first offense, but when they are throwing the ball, it's coming his way. And Jacoby Myers is that kind of guy where late rounds, that's usually the guy I'm targeting. What are your thoughts on Jacoby?
So I was if what you're saying is true and he breaks out this year, I was a year ahead because I was on Jacoby last year. And so I have that recency bias of bugging me a little bit, but I am not completely out on Jacoby. I do understand what you're saying. I think he is that cheaper guy you can get later, just like Jamie said, just like you said. I mean, I knew it was close to Hollywood Brown's targets, but I didn't realize it was pretty much the same. And like you said, you can get him 7 rounds later.
Why do you view last year as not a breakout year? Sorry to cut you off from the rest of your point, but
No.
I guess to me, I look at 126 targets and 83 receptions for 866 yards as a breakout. Ignore the touchdown part of it.
I think that's why I think that's part of it. I think that's part of it.
Yeah.
I'm not discounting anything he did. I think part of my problem and I'll get to, there's a little bit more I have, but part of the problem that I had is them bringing in more people, bringing in Devontae, bringing in, Parker. They didn't go out and get Devontae just to be a freaking stick on the sideline. But for some reason, and this is partly talking about deep flyers or whatever, I am actually more in on Bourne than I am in on Devontae. But because of the cost, because you're going to have to pay more for Devontae than you are Bourne for sure.
Yeah, just off the namesake.
Just off the namesake and everything else. Am I totally off on Jacoby? No. Am I a little off Jacoby more than you are? Yes. But if he ended up on my team a little bit later in the draft, I have no problem with that. I'll be completely honest, and I've been trying to get rid of one of them, and it hasn't happened yet. I have a dynasty team, and no one's doing it because they know I'm going to have to make a decision soon. I have a dynasty team that has Jacoby Myers, Kendrick Bourne, and Devontae Parker. Because what I did was Bourne wasn't doing much last year, whatever. It was the league I won last year, but I had an injury at wideout. So I went out and traded a second-round pick and got Jacoby Myers, had Devontae on the team. Devontae was just sitting on my bench, but then he goes to freaking New England, and now I got 3 Patriots, and no one wants any of them because they know that more realistically, I might have to get rid of one just to make roster cuts. That's a whole nother subject.
I think for me, though, I look at Jacoby where I'm high on him relative to his ADP because I look at him as a guy who I'm taking in the teens for rounds, and I am getting the upside of a guy that might finish, wide receiver 20 to 30, right? I don't look at him as a guy that's going to jump into the top 10 wide receivers, but I look at him as a guy who's going to be way out producing the cost I'm spending on him. Whether that's in redraft or in dynasty, I think there's a lot of upside where you can reap reward and be happy with the price you paid to get him. And that's where I'm definitely high on him. I'm not going to advocate for any weapon in the New England passing offense to be this prolific,
9 touchdown, 1,000 yards, 140.
I mean, I could see him having like 6 to 8 touchdowns and he was close to 1,000 yards last year. I could see him having 100 receptions, 1,000 yards. I don't want to bet on the touchdowns, but I think wide receiver 20 is a reasonable high-end upside for him. And he's one of those guys where at that price point, that'll win you leagues. If you've built out the rest of the starting lineup where you're in contention and then you add in someone like Jacoby and he produces like that, that'll take you over the top and get you the title. Yeah, so some of the guys are the cherry on top that'll help lead you to victory.
All right, so let's just continue the New England talk. And Damien Harris, the running back. I mean, last year, Damien Harris had 892 yards on 191 attempts. Here's the thing. I can't remember how many touchdowns he had. I know it was a decent amount, but here's my problem. I really do believe them bringing in Pierre Strong, Kevin Harris from South Carolina is going to do something to that offense. But the biggest thing is I really do believe that they are going to give my man, the bully, the bowling ball, Ramondre Stevenson, more of the work. Ramondre is a big boy, and at the end of the year, he started to get more work down along the goal line. Zach, do you remember what my devil's advocate was? It was Austin Eckler, and I was saying part of the problem that I had with Austin Eckler wasn't the fact that I didn't think he was a great player, because Austin Eckler is a great player. My problem with Austin Eckler is that he had 20 touchdowns, and they're all in the red zone. Bringing that back to this, I don't remember how many Harris's were or Damien's were all in the red zone, but Stevenson started getting the run in the red zone at the end of the year, and I believe that Stevenson could get the number 1 job by partway through the season. The other thing is, and this is a dynasty part, Damien is on his contract year. They did go out and draft Strong and Kevin Harris, like I said. Do I think Kevin Harris is going to be a superstar? No. But we all know that New England loves to just have multiple horses in the stable at running back. I mean, back in the day, you never knew who it was going to be. I mean, it could be James White, it could be Bolden, it could be Burkhead, it could be, and it's going to be the same thing to me. I think we're going to get back to the ways, and especially if Matt Patricia's in charge of help calling plays, I think we're going to go back to the days of not knowing what New England running back is going to be the guy. And I just think Damien Harris is going too high for where I would draft him at his ADP currently.
I like Damien if I'm getting him in a later round. I'm
Yep.
higher on Ramondre Stevenson. I mean, and it's fitting, coming off the Miles Sanders subject. This is someone that's in kind of a similar regard, Gainwell, Sanders, Stevenson,
Yep.
and him. I mean, they're the same in regards to, that RB1 is kind of undervalued if he maintains RB1, but that RB2 is definitely undervalued because for injury or if they really take that 50-50 workload, they've shown more promise. I like Stevenson a lot. Stevenson had some big weeks last year, but we've seen it with New England before. I mean, I look at, I believe it's 2018, they had Sony Michel who had 931 rushing yards, but then you had James White with 400 on the ground and 751 receiving. Cordero Patterson had 228 rushing, 247 receiving. Rex Burkhead had 180 on the ground, 130 in the air. I mean, they use their running backs. We've seen it so many times. They're not afraid to go 3-4 running backs deep, switch it up, give different looks. And that's what I expect. You already alluded to it. They got Pierre Strong. They got, what was Kevin White? Or
Kevin Harris.
Kevin Harris, thank you. They've got four guys. I mean, I like Kevin Harris. I like Pierre Strong coming into the draft. So I look at a lot of these guys to get some usage, and I expect regression from Damien Harris. If you need a running back, sure. If you did the zero RB approach and you took Damien Harris late to get one, yeah, that's fine. But you better get Ramondre Stevenson because otherwise that can really bite you in the ass.
Yep.
I would not want to depend on just the RB1 listed on the depth chart because there's going to be a lot of work hanging out for that RB2 as well. So I'd be careful.
I understand what good old boys Derek is saying. He's saying TD regression coming for Harris, but he should get around 200 carries and 900 yards, likely 8 to 10 TDs. He'll return value. I understand your point, Derek. I just personally think that I'm not as bullish as him on him, but if he does it, he'll end up a contract. Maybe he'll end up staying or go get some money. But I'm out on him on Dynasty for that reason. But I'm not totally out on him.
I think relative to ADP, though, you can definitely get a return of cost or a little bit more than what you paid for.
Yeah.
But you're definitely taking a risk if you're depending on that for more than this year, or you really need a lot more production in certain matchups to help you win weeks, because you might not get that with how many other guys that they could be given the ball in that backfield. What do you got next?
All right, so this was going to be Evan's next topic. So we're gonna go a little. Yeah, we're just gonna go over a little bit. I just want to bring up a couple things that he said instead of going all over all of his notes. His main point about Mr. Breece Hall. So let's just say, reading his real quick, I'm not going to read all of his notes, but let's just say Evan is a giant Breece Hall fan. And the main thing that I want to point out is that he believes by the time next year, we could be talking about a top 5 dynasty running back. What do you think about that? And what do you think about his overall, about Breece Hall overall? Let's just get into that.
I love Breece. I mean, he's part of the reason why I'm so high on Zach Wilson this year. Yep. I already have Breece Hall higher than Najee, if that says anything. I'm also expecting a little bit of regression in Najee this year. But I think Breece is the more talented running back. And that's over
Najee?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of what I saw Najee last year was simply volume. I wasn't impressed. I was excited about Najee coming into the year, but I don't want to get too far down that rabbit hole because I like Breece Hall a lot, though. And I've already alluded to how I like what the Jets have done with this offense, with how they're trying to revamp things, put weapons around Zach Wilson. I think Breece Hall will be a really good back where he's going to get a lot of work, but I also think Michael Carter can thrive as more of that Tariq Cohen type role as a supplemental guy. It definitely does hurt Michael Carter's stock because Breece Hall is that dude, but no, there's a lot of weapons on this Jets team I'm excited about, and Breece Hall is the number one guy that I'm trying to get. I mean, I just took him in the Scott Fish Bowl, and I'm expecting him to finish top 10 running backs. I feel good about that. I mean, that's where my expectation is for him out the gates. And I'll be disappointed if he's not in the top 10.
Yeah, I mean, I like Brees Hall. I mean, don't get me wrong, Brees Hall is going to be a top level dynasty running back. Let me ask you a couple questions. Where did you draft him in SFB?
I took Brees Hall at 411.
Would you
So
take him? Would you take him over ETN or David Montgomery right now?
I did take him over ETN, but that was simply because of ADP. And on the turn, I knew that Brees Hall was going to be more of an attractive name there rather than ETN. I actually have both finishing, right around that 5 and 6 spot in RBs this year. So for me,
we will talk after the show real quick.
yeah, no, I love both. I mean, I'm a big ETN guy, but yeah, no, I took Brees Hall high aggressive here. Let me pull it up. If you give me your thoughts on Brees Hall though, while I pull it up real quick so I can give specific reference to my SFP.
Yeah. So real quick on Brees, I think Brees is a stud. It bums me out that he went to the Jets, not because of the fact that it was a bad landing spot for him. I was one of the Michael Carter soldiers last year, and I thought Michael Carter was going to be I was like, not saying that Michael Carter was going to outperform Javonte, but I was like, for ADP and even regular NFL draft capital, Carter's going to get close to, the value that Javonte did. And then they come in and bring in Brees Hall. I understand why they did, though, because Rob Salah and the GM, I can't remember the GM's name, but they're trying to make Frisco kind of like 2.0-ish.
But they use multiple backs there.
I understand that, and that's my
Yep.
point. That's why I think they brought him in, because Tevin Coleman's an old man. They only brought him in because Salah knew him from Frisco. They don't really have another running back, and they saw the opportunity to get Brees Hall, and I have absolutely no problem with that. Is he going to – I could see it starting 60-40, but if Brees Hall is the guy that we think he is as a rookie, it could be up to 70-30.
I agree.
What do you got when I want to bring this up from I'm going to bring up a comment from Good Old Boys while you talk.
Okay, let's see which one. Oh, the ETN outperforms Brees. I mean, I have ETN at 5 and Brees Hall at 6. So yeah, that's me trying not to get too carried away with ETN because I love him, and I could go on and on about how he'll work with Trevor Lawrence this year and with the new head coach, not named Urban. But ETN over Hall this year, Hall outside the top 12, ETN will be RB 5 to 7 is what Jamie says. I could see Hall starting outside of that top group because of that 60-40 split, what we're expecting, but I assume more of the workload comes to Hall by the end of the year, maybe more of like a JT type production in his rookie year. I'm not saying Brees Hall is the talent that JT is, because I think JT's in a tier of his own, but you get what I'm saying in that regard. But with Michael Carter, though, I think people forget that he was the RB2 at, I believe it was North Carolina, behind Javonte, and we still loved him. He knew how to produce in that role with his limited usage, and he's right back to that role. So I'm confident he can produce there. But specifically with my Scott Fishbowl draft, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 11, 12, 13, 14. I took Brees Hall as RB 17 and ETN as RB 19. To give you an idea of the guys that went before it, Brees Hall was Aaron Jones, Javonte Williams, Cam Akers, David Montgomery.
Yep.
I mean, Javonte is the one I probably would have considered over Brees. But from there, yeah, ETN was the only other one I was eyeing. And I knew people aren't necessarily as aggressive on ETN as I am. And based on how this draft was going and who needed QBs, I knew he would be there for me. But I love ETN. I'm really high on it. And let's see. Good old boy said
I want to bring this up. I have heard this before from other people. Hall is an upright runner, doesn't really run behind his pads. I think he'll have issues moving a pile and finding the end zone. I'm not disagreeing with that completely, Derek. I just want to see what he can do and see if he learns more as a pro. why not we jump over to your other one, Zach, and go to the NFC East. I'm going to say it for you. Mr. Brian Robinson.
You want to talk about running backs I'm out on? Antonio Gibson.
Okay. Okay.
No, I was not a believer off the bat from Gibson. We saw a lot of fumble issues last year. I mean, I was looking at Jarrett Patterson as a UDFA guy last year because I love Jarrett at Buffalo, and I was so unimpressed with Gibson that I figured, hey, maybe even this UDFA might steal some from him. But, that clearly didn't work out to an extent. But, I mean, for a UDFA, he produced for me well in those final weeks. But in regards to Brian Robinson, I love him. I like the value I'm getting him in a lot of leagues, whether that's dynasty, whether that's yearly. And he's a guy where, he'll have to take some time to work his way up the depth chart. Obviously, they have J.D. McKissick there as well. They're expecting to use a lot of the running backs in that running back room. But I think Brian Robinson's the most talented running back they have, and I think he's going to be the one that fumbles the least. And if you want me to take Antonio in these first couple of rounds or take Brian towards the end of drafts, I want to take Brian every time. I mean, for example, Scott Fishbowl, I got Brian Robinson at 16-11. He's just kind of a stash piece, no expectations. But, if he's suddenly 60-40 with Antonio, or where Antonio's the 60, I'm going to thrive in that role. Wait, and let's see. Good old boy said Gibby played well down the stretch once the shin fracture healed up. He played all right. I mean, the shin fracture didn't do anything with his butterfingers on the ball, though, and I think that's more so what I'm concerned about. He can't hold on to the ball, and he's got to figure out the fumbling, because they're already talking about using him less in the red zone, and that alone, if Brian Robinson's suddenly just the red zone guy, there's already a big upside there. What are your thoughts?
All right, so good old boys knows this personally.
You're an Antonio guy, aren't you?
I'm an Antonio stan,
breaks my heart.
but this offseason I have started to waver off of Antonio, partly because of the fact that they did bring Brian in, partly because of the fact that they brought McKissick back, and all of this talk about his hands. That's why I gave you that look, because it drives me absolutely nuts.
Because he's eating the popcorn? Is that why it drives you nuts?
Yeah, good. Derek says good second half of the season, he was the RB4. That's why I'm glad you said that, Derek. That's why I'm optimistic about Gibby. Hopefully he can figure something out. But I do believe that right off the bat, like I'm talking right off the bat, either McKissick, it's not going to be as much Gibby. They're going to make Gibby prove it. And part of the thing that I want to bring up, and this has nothing to do with Gibby particular, this has to do with other stuff. I heard it with the Baker argument and all this other stuff is with Baker Mayfield going to Carolina and all that stuff is we can't forget that the preseason is only 3 games now. So battles in camp and stuff, and they can't hit as much and all that. So battles in camp that got won in camp sometimes won't be won in camp. It'll take 1 or 2 weeks to figure out. So I honestly think that when the season first starts, Ron Rivera and that offense is going to have more of a split right away and make Gibson prove that he can do what they want him to do and then go from there. But I do believe that Brian Robinson is going to be a good piece to this offense. I drafted Brian Robinson in 2 rookie drafts. I even drafted him in a 20-team league that is super deep, so obviously 20 teams. And I spent a decent pick on him because I needed a running back. I do believe that Brian Robinson is going to be something. It just scares me that it's going to be at the behest of Gibson. But like I said, I think it's going to take a couple weeks before they figure out what they're going to do. So I don't think early in the season we're going to be happy either way.
And say what you will about the Gibson guy, whether you love him, whether you hate him. I mean, obviously we have 2 polar opposites of feelings on him. My concern more so is about the price relative to how I look at their offense. I don't like Carson Wentz at all. Don't let me say that first. But I have a feeling they're going to be throwing the ball more than they were with Heineke. And if that's the case,
hands
I
down.
don't look at them. I think that hurts Gibson, and I think that helps someone like McKissick, or if Brian Robinson can be utilized in that way.
Yeah.
And that's where if Gibson can figure out the fumbles or the drops, on these little dump passes, the sky is the ceiling, or that's the limit. Like he's done a lot. He just needs to figure out some of these small tangible aspects. And if there's something like that, though, what I like, and it reminds me also of what we were talking about with Brees Hall, with the good old boys mentioning how Hall is an upright runner. Some of these aspects of their games, there are things that can be developed. They can be improved on over time. If there's flaws in a guy's game that are making me a little nervous, I always want it to be something like these aspects that can be enhanced, improved on with training, with concentration, with, trying to adjust little aspects of this and that where they can fix those issues. For me, I get concerned when it's injuries, when it's something like he's undersized or he's just, he's not a good decision maker at reading the gaps on the offensive line, where if they don't have that mental fortitude or the health aspect, those are the parts that concern me. But if everything else is there, they just need to work on it, I can see it. But Brian Robinson, sleeper in Dynasty, nearly. I love him. I mean, I think I was taking him in the third round of most rookie drafts. I mean, I felt he was undervalued there, and I see a lot of potential upside. Do I know how quickly he'll tap into that or what the true ceiling is? No. But relative to the price, I'm willing to pay it and wish for the best. And that's why I love Brian Robinson, because you're not paying a lot. And if Gibby does show more issues with fumbling or with not being able to catch well, there's going to be opportunities for someone. And someone like Brian Robinson is a guy worth taking a late round flyer on.
Hands down. I agree with you on Brian. It's just I'm not out on Gibby completely. That's my only issue. So to get on to my last one, let's go to upstate New York. I don't know how we're going to agree or disagree because me and Zach haven't talked about this one either. Sometimes we know what we're doing and sometimes we don't. So Dawson Knox last year finished 7th in tight ends and half-point PPVR. But this is what scares me. He was 7th in half-point PPR, 19th in catches, 20th, and this is just out of tight ends, 19th in catches, 20th in targets, 15th in yards. And I know I'm not saying that yards is everything, but here's why I think he was, it is why he was the number 7th ranked tight end. He was 5th in red zone targets and tied for 1st in TDs with 9. Hunter Henry and Mandrews, Mr. Mark Andrews out of Baltimore, were the other two that tied him at 9. And we're sitting here saying Andrews is the number 1 overall tight end because he is. But he's also getting targets like absolute crazy because it's Lamar and the talent pool in Baltimore isn't that great at wide receiver. There's my problem. You look at Buffalo. Yes, they've had some vacated targets from Beasley and Emmanuel Sanders, but sometimes I hate hearing, there's all these vacated targets because they do bring people in. You got Diggs. I am out on Gabe Davis at his current ADP. I think partly not because it's my team, but the Chiefs don't have a defense and secondary, and that's why he made all those good plays in the playoffs, not because he's the greatest wide receiver on the team. So you have Gabe Davis, you have Stephon Diggs. They brought in Jamison Crowder, who is Mr. Slot guy. They go out. I don't think you got to remember, I even forgot about it till yesterday, that they drafted Khalil Shakir out of Boise State, who is another kind of slot guy. There's also rumors, I did hear a couple weeks ago that I guess there is an out in Crowder's contract. that if he does get cut by start of the season, they don't owe him a lot. So look out for that. I don't think it's going to happen. The biggest other thing is he got short targets. They go out, they have Singletary, they still have Moss, and then they go out and draft Dalvin Cook's brother, James Cook, out of Georgia, who's going to get some of that short yardage targets. The other thing that we keep forgetting that I don't hear enough, Buffalo does like to run two tight end sets. You have Knox. Last year, I think it was Sweeney. Don't forget, they got OJ Howard now. Okay? OJ Howard is not a blocking tight end. So if you're going to bring OJ Howard into the game, he's going to be running a route. I don't expect Dawson Knox to lose a lot of his red zone, like 5 yard and in, because if you bring in OJ Howard from the 5 yard and in, you know it's going to be a pass play or he's going to be running a route or, a decoy. But if you have Knox in the 5, he can run or he can block. I am out on Knox at his current ADP. I don't think he's going to finish in the top. Just like you said earlier with one of your takes, I want those top 3 or 4 guys. If I can't get one of them and I drop down to Schultz and Waller and all that, if I don't get Hawkinson and down or up, I am punting. Not completely punting, but I would rather wait and get Gesicki at ADP or someone like that, another tight end that I'm out on an ADP, and I'll bring it up because it is this division, so we won't be bringing it up in our other previews. I'm out on Goddard. I know you're out on a lot of people in the East. Yeah. But Gesicki is a guy that I would target late, or Smith is a guy I would target late over Dawson Knox at his current ADP. What do you think, Zach?
The Bills, I mean, they have 2 weapons that I love, Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs. Everyone else, I'm good. Yep. No thanks. I mean, if it's a flyer late, whether that's Crowder, whether that's Isaiah McKenzie, whether that's Shakir, whether that's James Cook, I'm interested in those guys for a late round flyer, some upside potentially. But the Bills remind me a lot. I mean, you can see these Packer logos all over my background. And the thing about it is I have seen this offense so many times in Green Bay. When it's one guy like Stephon, you have that guy that's the 1,000-yard guy, the 100 reception guy, the 10 touchdowns, you name it. And then every other guy, whether it was Richard Rodgers, James Jones, whoever, 400 yards, 40 receptions, 4 touchdowns across the board by 2-3 guys. And I see that for a lot of these weapons. I see Gabe Davis getting a lot of hype. I see Dawson Knox getting a lot of hype. And to me, they're both it's a lot of hype. I don't want to invest into that there where, I see the upside. If Gabe Davis is that true number 2, awesome. You're getting him at it's funny because the price you pay for Davis and Knox is relative to what you're hoping that upside price would be, not for the low price
of what it is.
Yeah, you're paying for that production that
you're
we've
paying
only
for
seen.
You're paying for expectation, not paying for.
I want to pay for what I've seen with hopes of more, not pay for what I'm hoping for. And I get getting your guy, but
here's a perfect metaphor. You don't buy stocks at what you think they're going to be valued at in a year. You buy them at what they're valued now.
With what you think they could be at. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I love Diggs. I love Allen. I mean, they have a special place in my heart. I won a league. I mean, you ready for a little short story before we dive into our cheats of the week? It's pretty good story.
Do it, and then we'll go cheat of the week real quick.
So, this was 2020 season. I'm in the championship, and this was when Kamara had 6 touchdowns, on Thursday. Yep. So I'm playing against Kamara, and Kamara has 6 touchdowns. He puts up 48 points. This is a 1 QB PPR 10-man dynasty league. But he has Kamara play on Thursday, 6 touchdowns, 48 fantasy points. He also has Mike Evans play on Saturday, scores 40 fantasy points. He's up 88-0 before I have anyone play because all my guys played on Sunday and Monday. And while I was projected to win 142 to 122, he suddenly projected 220 while I'm still at my 142 projection. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Because I was about to be runner-up 2 years in a row.
Okay.
Well, all his players are done by the afternoon games, and I have 4 guys left. He finishes at, I believe, like roughly 208 for total score. Didn't quite hit his projection, and I'm at 80 with only Sunday Night Football and Monday Night Football left. Sunday Night Football, Aaron Jones, 90 yards, 30 receiving with a few receptions, so he gets me like 11 points. I had Devontae Adams though. He had 3 touchdowns, 140 yards, 10 receptions. So between the two, I'm going into Monday Night Football where I believe it was 128 to 204, and I have 2 guys left, Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs. They played New England, and this is when they benched Josh Allen after the third quarter. Stephon Diggs, 3 touchdowns, 14 receptions, like 180 yards. Josh Allen, 5 touchdowns, 300 and something yards, another 50 on the ground. And I came back to win. I was down. I felt like I was out. And I set the league record for points in a week, and I won 210 to 204.
Wow.
And I no longer have Diggs in that league, but they will forever hold a special place in my heart just for a comeback I never thought would happen. But I did want to just touch on one thing. I know we're not really going to get into the cheats of the week.
Okay, we'll get into
but,
it. You can do just one sec. You can do it in a sec. I want to say one thing to Jamie first, and then we'll do a quick cheat of the week.
All right.
Jamie, I know you're a Browns fan. I agree about Njoku, but wait till our next show in 2 weeks because we are doing the North divisions in 2 weeks, and I already might have something up my sleeve.
I wonder which player I'll pick from Green Bay.
I already know. We're not even going there, okay? All right, so we're gonna do real quick. We're gonna do cheat of the week. Evan's not here.
We just want to cover Miami.
But mine and Evan's are somewhat tied together.
And mine was as well. Yeah.
So let's just get into it. Yours was too?
Yeah, that's why I said just Miami. We can just do that.
Right, so our cheat of the week is just going to be the Miami Dolphins. Zach, why don't you go first about what you want to talk about the Dolphins, and then I will go.
I'm scared. They added all these weapons around. It's going to kind of feed into what you're talking about. I mean, I think you like Tua, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll let you get more into that in a second.
Yeah.
But I love the weapons around them. I want them in fantasy, but I'm scared. I don't like Tua. I think this is a prove-it year, and this is the year we're going to see it one way or another, because guess what? If you suck with Waddle and Tyreek surrounding you, I think it's pretty clear that, hey, you're not the guy. But if he is, like I mentioned before about getting in ahead of time on QBs, Tua's price has already gone up ever since they got Tyreek, but this is still the cheapest it's going to be if he does prove it this year. I like these weapons. I'd be careful about the running back room, though, because, they have 9 million running backs. You don't know which one is going to get it. I like some of them, but they scare me because, it could be Raheem for a week. It could be Gaskin. It could be so many guys. And, relative to where they're being drafted, I don't know necessarily that any of them are a great value there. Gesicki is an interesting guy for late rounds, but I'm either taking Tyreek, I'm taking Waddle, and I might consider Tua. I want to ask this before I turn it to you. I recently did a startup Superflex Dynasty draft. I took round 3. I got Jalen Waddle. On the turn into round 4, I got Tyreek Hill. In the 5th round, I got Tua. And I have
double stack.
Tua's my second QB, but I've got. Do you like that if you have the double stack there?
I could see a build around it. I just don't like doing that personally, but I don't mind it.
I have plenty of other weapons.
Yeah, exactly.
I figured, hey, if I'm taking Tua, or if I'm taking one of those wide receivers, I might as well take the other. And then when Tua was still there, I said, shit, I think that's where most of the fantasy points are coming from for that team. And while I'm not a big Tua guy, might try and shop him, and Hill. But actually, speaking of which, I'm probably going to do that tonight. I might try and sell the Tyreek Tua swap because, Mike, I'll let you get into it, but I'm not a Tua believer, and I'm thinking, hey,
Okay,
Miami is getting a new QB next year.
So before we get into my Tua take, because it's kind of in between what I'm about to say, I really wish Evan was here for this one because I just read Evan's notes. Evan's all in on this offense. So I wish I was able to be the judge and jury on this one and just let Evan and Zach go at it. So I want to give Evan his props and tell everyone that he's all in on the Miami offense. Here's my thing. I am not all in on Tua. But I think too many people are discounting him already, Zach. That's my issue. My issue is that I think people are jumping off where you have your plan, and then not just with Tua, where you have your thought process with QBs, your third year idea. I think too many people are jumping off now and just saying, oh, they're bringing in the weapons, but Tua's not this. Tua can't throw deep. Yes, I'm one of the ones that says Tua probably can't throw deep, but I think that hinders Hill more than it hinders other people in the offense because personally, and I think Evan mentioned my name in his take, and this is the reason I think he did. Evan knows that I was on Waddle last year like no other. I have Waddle all over the place. A lot of people had, of course, Chase was my number one WR, but a lot of people had Devontae number 2. I had Waddle from the very start. I believe that Devontae would not be where he was at all. Like right now, he would not be where he was if Waddle didn't get hurt in his junior year at Alabama when he got hurt on a punt return against Tennessee. I don't believe that Devontae would have won. I don't believe that Devontae would have won the Heisman if Waddle was there. I think it probably would have been somebody else. If you can still go out and get Tua cheap, I know his price is starting to go up again, but if in Dynasty, if you can go out and get Tua cheap, I am doing it. If quarterbacks in my SFB division were not flying off the board, my plan was to wait on my QB2 and get some other positions and not go QB like I did from the 5-hole. And Tua was one of my targets depending on what happened in the draft. I ended up having to go QB because the draft board was just dictating that. So my whole thing with Tua is don't be out on him yet. If you have Dynasty and you have him, hold him. But like you said, he could end up not doing great. And then if he doesn't do great this year, they're going to try to get rid of him, and that's fine. But at the same token, if he does prove that he can do something, and they brought in McDaniel from San Francisco thinking that he can help them, because let's be real, they haven't done much for him, in my opinion. Yes, Flores was a decent coach, but all these rumors about Deshaun Watson coming to Miami ever since those rumors started, and then, they're going to trade him to Houston, and he's already a fragile quarterback. Like we already know that he gets shook up a little bit. A team with all those rumors and everything else doesn't help his situation. Now that he is solidified as that quarterback, there's no one coming in and getting him, no one coming in to take his job. This is his trial year, and we'll see about that.
And relative to his price, if I'm getting him in the 5th round of a super flex, I like that price. If I don't want to take him round 2, I don't want to be aggressive on getting him, but he's one of those guys where I might see if he's fallen a little bit. And, if I get him in round 5, I might write it out a few weeks and say first 2 weeks of the year, I see some stuff that concerns me, but from a fantasy perspective, he's producing. I might sell him high where people are like, if I see things where I don't think he'll be the guy next year, I'm going to try and capitalize on early fantasy production, selling on that price point and get out. But I want to at least see. I don't want to invest on it. But remember Tank for Tua by Jamie? Oh,
yeah.
Isn't it set? Hey, it's all about tanking for the next Alabama QB now. Bryce Young, baby. And CJ. CJ's
Right now, I am not in on Bryce.
Oh.
I'm all in on I'm in on CJ. I'm just right now I'm not in on.
I'm all in on like 6 of the QBs in next year's
I know
class.
you are. We'll talk about this later. But I think we have talked enough about the AFC and the NFC East. Join us next time in 2 weeks because we will be discussing Zach's Green Bay Packers and the NFC North and the AFC North. We're just going to keep it nice and simple out. Please like and subscribe and comment on the YouTube channel at Going for Two. Thanks to Jeff Lambert for letting us have this show. For Zach at the Big Pulowski and for me at Drop the Mic FF. Have a good night, everyone, and see you.